Your Excellency, Deputy Chief Minister, ladies and gentlemen, this is the first time that I have had the solemn privilege of speaking at Holocaust Memorial Day, and I'm conscious that I do so on, as has already been explained, a significant occasion. As you all now know, it is 75 years ago today that the largest Nazi concentration camp, Auschwitz-Birkenau, was liberated by the Russian army, and the appalling truth of Hitler's genocide became known. In the years that have passed, the 27th of January has been chosen to mark Holocaust Memorial Day, to remember the 6 million Jewish men, women, and children who were murdered during the Second World War, alongside the millions of others killed under Nazi persecutions and in subsequent genocides. It is not surprising that this day was chosen, as that camp and what was found there reveals man's capacity for evil as perhaps no other place and event could. The Nazis did not confine their murderous activities to the Jews, of course. There were others whom they deemed different and less than human. These people were labelled Untermenschen, and as well as Jews included homosexuals, the disabled, and those from Slavic countries. Although the Shoah, the Nazi killing of the Jews, was an unprecedented attack against a religion and a people, and must be remembered in itself, we remember too the other victims of genocide, millions of lives lost and wasted and changed in modern-day mass killings. How then do we mark such things? How do we try to understand the unthinkable? To turn our minds to that darkest part of our human nature and own it for ourselves so that we can be sure it cannot happen again? Well, one of the ways, perhaps, is to understand it by knowing our stories, the stories of those who experienced it and were affected by it. Here in Jersey, as we all know, 21 islanders were deported to Germany for offences against the occupying forces. It was there that they died or were killed in Nazi prisons and concentration camps. Many of their offences were trivial in today's terms, and yet others were notable by standing up for what was right against the forces occupying their island. Now, I confess that during my childhood or my early adult life, I was ignorant of the stories of the islanders who were sent from their island in that way never to return. I was aware of the appalling story of the Holocaust insofar as it related to the Jewish people. My parents had a book about that, but I did not really become aware of the Jersey stories until I had qualified as an advocate and had joined the law firm of Auger & Lecornu. There in the reception area was a faded picture of the founder of the firm, Léonce Lemaitre Auger, one of the 21, with a brief paragraph telling the story of his trial for espionage-related charges, his subsequent acquittal, return to Jersey, and then subsequent deportation and death in Germany. He wasn't Jewish, nor was he otherwise Untermenschen, but he was a victim of the same regime that produced the atrocities that we remember here today. Did I pay much attention at the time? Probably not enough. And that's why it is so important to keep repeating these stories again and again. It's too easy to make the Nazi Holocaust or any genocide a matter of numbers and statistics, and forget that these events are personal. They're about families, about terror, and about the dehumanization of people, our brothers and our sisters. I think, therefore, it can be helpful to concentrate on a particular person in order to bring home what occurred. Now, I can't, in the time available to me, talk about all 21 of our islanders, but I can mention one or two. Canon Clifford Cocq was a rector of St Saviour's Church. He openly defied and challenged the German occupiers. He would broadcast news about the Allied war effort whilst riding his bike through St Helier. Now, wireless sets were, of course, banned under the occupation forces, and islanders who kept their sets hidden away risked imprisonment. Canon Cocq was part of a group innocent saviour who were tried in April of 1943. He was sentenced to 18 months imprisonment for disseminating anti-German news. He died on the 20th of September 1944 in Zoschen, a camp run by the SS near Naumburg in Germany. Someone shopkeeper Louisa Gould's crime was protecting an escaped Russian slave worker, Fyodor Bilburi. Betrayed by neighbours to the German occupiers, she was arrested on the 25th of May 1944, after her home was searched. Buri had been safely moved to another hideaway, but a wireless set, a camera and gift labels which identified her as the giver and Buri as the recipient were found. At her trial the following month, she was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment and deported. She died in the gas chambers of Ravensbrück. I am reminded of the plaque, the unveiling of which was attended by Buri, who survived the war thanks to her aid. Louisa Gould did not recognise the Russian slave worker as inferior. He was, in her words, another mother's son. June Sinclair, who was half a Jewish orphan, and she'd come from London. Not very much is known about June Sinclair, except she worked in one of the hotels that were requisitioned by the German occupying forces. It's thought that she was sent into the camp system after retaliating by slapping a German soldier's face after he molested her at work. She is thought to have been about 20 years old when she too perished in Ravensbrück concentration camp on the 26th of April 1943. These are just a few words about each of these people, and they are easily lost in the noise that surrounds us every day. But if we read their stories slowly, if we use the gift of imagination to place ourselves in the shoes of those people and others, the courage displayed by some, the experience of capture, interrogation, fear, of being sent away from all you know, of being ill and dying in pain, far from home and loved ones, and in one case at least, the journey to the unspeakable horror of the gas chamber, then we can perhaps begin to understand the real purpose of today. This day gives us an opportunity to recall what occurred and reflect, asking what lessons we have learned, and how we can prevent the recurrence of anything like this again. Sadly, the reality is that since 1945, as we all know, history has shown that humanity has not learned the lessons that it needed to learn. But amongst the stories of devastation, as these three of many stories illustrate, there are also stories of hope. People who stood up to be counted, who risked their lives to save other lives, even the lives of those they did not know. Those who fought and who still fight against the forces of racism, intolerance and tyranny. A former bailiff, Sir Philip Balash, speaking on this day in 2009, said this: "We cannot teach people to be heroes, but we can teach children to understand how the bullying or hatred or disdain of minorities and discrimination against people who are different in some way are the first steps on the road to Auschwitz. If we can teach young people to challenge any racist talk or attitudes and to show respect for others irrespective of race, gender, orientation or religion, we will have learned the lesson of Auschwitz." I don't apologise for adopting those words, echoing them, and those sentiments. This year marks 75 years since Jersey was freed from the occupying forces, and it seems to me that the stories of the liberation are inextricably linked to the stories of the 21. Freedom, peace, and inclusivity are the key themes of Liberation Day, and the stories of the 21, and indeed all of the victims of Holocaust, which are about the absence of those things, must be heard at the same time as the joyful stories that we will be told on that day. They are two sides of the same coin. Aptly, the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust's theme for today is, as you've heard, Stand Together. Well, if we continue to listen out with vigilance for the insidious message of intolerance, and tyranny, and call it out and resist it when we hear it, if we make it a positive aim in this place to create a kinder and more tolerant society, if we simply stand together as fellow human beings, not as black or white, not of any particular religious orientation, not heterosexual or homosexual, then surely in doing that, we will have heard and honoured the stories about 21, the broader message of Holocaust and of liberation. Thank you.